When we have a back injury, chances are the internal stabilization mechanism stops working. Research has proven that with surgery or pain, the naturally occurring neuromuscular mechanism stops activating. You need that mechanism to control motion and load in your spine. So when you lose that mechanism, you start relying on compensatory strategies or other skills. Let's define for you what some of those skills are. You might remember that when your back pain was at its worst, you had to hold on to the wall when you walked to the bathroom, or you would hold on to your leg, or there would be a cane or a piece of furniture. Those devices which are outside of you and help control your movement inside are called external stabilizers. As I'm standing before you, I can externally stabilize by crossing my legs and my arms, creating a framework for my spine. Am I really stabilizing motion? Maybe not, but I feel like my spine is tighter. There's control because I'm tightening the structures around it. I'm also leaning into the wall. The wall, because it doesn't move, acts as an external stabilizer. The way you stand relative to a motion or a load. If someone's going to throw me a ball and I catch the ball, I'm going to stand in the direction that the ball's being thrown at me. If I go to catch the ball and I'm not standing in the direction of the load, I make that stability less effective. So what we always do is we look at how we might use external stability to support us and help us control motion and load on one level. But external stability doesn't work alone. It works in conjunction with internal stability. Internal stability is the activation of your transverse abdominis. Activation of the transverse abdominis occurs without bending your spine. And it's easy to activate, but it's not something you've ever had to measure or look at before. So we're going to look at internal stability and how you activate it. I want you to imagine a diagonal line between your belly button and the base of the back of your neck. That's a diagonal line that goes from your lower front to your upper back. What I'm going to ask you to do is to gently draw your belly button up that diagonal line at an intensity of 2 or 3 out of a maximum effort of 10. By doing that, you establish a base level of contraction that you can be aware of. It's much more difficult to contract at about a 1 on a scale of 0 to 10. So giving yourself a little more obvious contraction will start you on your path toward activating your transverse abdominis. One of the other things you'll notice, and I'm going to let go of my contraction, is that as I let go of my contraction, there's more subtle movement that occurs around me. My knees feel relaxed. I feel relaxed, but the notice is that I'm resting on myself. So when I activate my transverse abdominis, there's a lifting sensation that should occur. I'm not extending and I'm not flexing forward. Rather, I feel this lifting sensation that might unload the pressure of my feet on the floor. It might unload when I activate my transverse abdominis. It might unload the weight of hanging on my arms. So here's what it looks like without a transverse abdominis contraction. And then this is what it looks like with a transverse abdominis contraction. You might be able to see that there's a very subtle lifting sensation. It's a very powerful movement. It isn't something you should take lightly, because this contraction was always happening in your body, but you never knew it. You never had to pay attention to it. Now, activating internal stabilization is a conscious skill. It's something I want you to be aware of right now and for the rest of your life. But right now, you might be at low skill, high effort to activate this. Within 30 days and good practice, you'll be at higher skill and lower effort. So the feeling is that this skill or this activation of your transverse abdominis will happen faster. You won't have to think about it as much. One of the next skills I'd like to talk about is the use of a pelvic tilt. If, for instance, I was going to bend forward to pick up a trash can, I might be bending in my weak link in my back. And if I know that that's a stressor for me, I might tilt my pelvis and take the load off of my low back and disperse it through the rest of my spine and always stabilize. So a pelvic tilt doesn't usually act on its own. It's a way to reposition the segment so you're in a more safe or favorable position to load that segment. How much you need of any of these skills depends on your perception. What feels right? What feels like it's too much? Remember that in the moment you can adjust your skills to make them be appropriate for what your need is in that moment. The fourth skill that I want to talk about is facing the task. I'm facing you right now. But if I'm doing dishes and I go to put dishes in the dishwasher, you can see that I have a compound motion in my low back. This is flexion and rotation at the same time. If I want to take that motion out and simplify things to decrease the amount of stress on my back, I'm going to wash the dishes and then face the task as I put the dish in the dishwasher. Now, this might feel very mechanical, but what you're doing is you're protecting your back, creating an environment so that it can heal. One of the next skills that we're going to talk about is breathing. The important thing is to breathe. People will often hold their breath when they're picking up an object, like grocery bags, or pushing a chair across the living room floor. They'll hold their breath because there's the perception of feeling tightness in their back. That tightness comes from an increase in cerebrospinal fluid pressure. An injured disc, or for that matter, any disc, doesn't really like that. So it's helpful to exhale on the load and to not hold your breath when you're performing a loading task. So exhaling on the load when you pick up the bags, before you pick them up, take a breath in, and as you pick up the bags, exhale out. You can practice this strategy with the effort of any load: opening a door, pulling a drawer out, putting your coat on. Simple things that you can do every day, practicing exhalation with the load and inhale when the load decreases. The last skill is compliance and discipline. Compliance and discipline is the just do it part. If you don't practice your skills, you never get them to be familiar with your daily activities. If you incorporate all these skills into your daily activity, you begin to change the way you move in space. Now you're including stability or control of motion and load. This helps to decrease the inflammatory process and helps the joint to recover. But it's important to remember that all these skills work in combination. They don't just work alone. So begin to do things around your house, incorporating the skills in a way that seems appropriate. Oftentimes, just by practicing your skills, you'll begin to understand how they improve the quality of motion and load in your body.